In this podcast episode, Dinesh D'Souza explores the fractured state of American politics, particularly focusing on the internal conflicts and cultural shifts within the conservative movement known as MAGA. Drawing on his unique perspective as an immigrant who assimilated into American life during the Reagan era and later embraced Trumpism, D'Souza delves into how political discourse has deteriorated and how this divisiveness has led to a fracturing within the right itself. D'Souza begins by reflecting on the current political atmosphere, describing it as more akin to warfare than democratic debate. He asserts that instead of mutual respect and the pursuit of shared national goals, politics now resemble a battleground where each side seeks to completely annihilate the other. Unlike previous generations, where despite disagreements, Americans generally shared a common set of ends, a strong, prosperous country upholding founding principles, today each side fundamentally sees the other's values as evil. This divergence of goals makes compromise nearly impossible and fuels unchecked hostility. This hostile environment has bred what D'Souza calls a gangsterized political culture, characterized by the use of state power to prosecute opponents and a breakdown of traditional norms. His own experience, including legal prosecution after producing a controversial film, revealed to him the ruthlessness with which political enemies are pursued, signaling to him a reality where opponents are treated as existential enemies to be destroyed rather than fellow citizens with differing views. The conversation also explores the dual nature of the crisis, economic dislocation paired with cultural and moral upheaval. On the economic front, many working-class Americans, especially younger generations, feel betrayed by a system rigged by elites who do not prioritize their interests, fostering suspicion and sometimes extremism. This sense of betrayal fuels conspiracy theories and erodes trust in institutions, further deepening the divide. Economically dislocated communities suffer not just financially, but also socially and culturally, with destruction of local businesses and civic life contributing to a sense of loss and alienation. On the cultural side, there is a fundamental clash between an ethic of identity and authenticity, rooted in individual self-expression and relative morals, and traditional views anchored by external moral codes, such as the Ten Commandments or social order. This moral polarization feeds the cultural wars dominating public discourse and takes a toll on societal cohesion. D'Souza narrates his own political evolution from a Reagan-era conservative who appreciated an intellectually grounded cosmopolitan conservatism emphasizing universal American principles to his embrace of MAGA's combative, retaliatory stance. He identifies the Bush era as a turning point where mainstream conservatism faltered, leading to internal revolts culminating in Trump's rise. He argues that traditional conservatives operated on principles of restraint and morality, holding themselves to higher standards and refraining from mirroring the harsh tactics of their opponents, often to their detriment. MAGA, by contrast, rejects this for a philosophy of reciprocal aggression, paying back in your own coin to deter future attacks. While this scorched earth approach marks a radical departure from former norms, D'Souza contends that it may be the only viable means to counteract the ruthlessness they increasingly face. D'Souza criticizes elements within the current conservative media landscape, highlighting figures like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, who, he argues, have shifted from their earlier constructive roles into promoting conspiracy theories and divisive rhetoric. He describes their current styles as a disservice to serious discourse, Owens as a detective unraveling an endless series of conspiracies, and Carlson as a ventriloquist amplifying dubious narratives under the guise of interrogative debate. This shift reflects a larger fragmentation and weakening of the intellectual conservative class that once policed extremist elements and enforced ideological boundaries within the movement. Many former establishment conservatives became never-Trumpers and lost influence over the direction of the right, allowing more sensationalist and conspiratorial voices to dominate conservative media. This has led to a culture where serious debate is avoided and figures fear platforming or engaging with more radical personalities lest they lose credibility or followers. Debates occur less frequently, and the culture tends towards siloing. A significant portion of the discussion centers on the contentious role of Israel in contemporary American politics. D'Souza highlights how Israel is often wielded as a scapegoat within conspiratorial frameworks that draw alarming parallels to historic anti-Semitic tropes, falsely attributing disproportionate manipulative control of global or American elites to Jewish or pro-Israel interests. He finds it puzzling and troubling that even within the right, segments have adopted these narratives, undermining both American national interests and conservative unity. D'Souza offers a robust defense of Israel's legitimacy, arguing it meets all the criteria for rightful nationhood, including original inhabitation, international treaties, and conquest. Nevertheless, this reasoning falls on deaf ears among those emotionally committed to opposing Israel, pointing to the emotional and ideological nature of these disputes more than factual disagreements. He also discusses the left's alliance with radical Islam as part of a shared opposition to Israel, America, and Western principles. This alliance, while unstable ideologically, is united by common enemies and has forged an alliance harmful to Western civilization. D'Souza warns that radical Islam is an increasing threat domestically as well, with its infiltration growing particularly in Europe and parts of the United States, raising concerns about national security and cultural integrity. D'Souza acknowledges internal challenges within the MAGA movement, especially related to maintaining order and coherence amidst radicalizing tendencies at the fringes. The conservative movement faces the task of distinguishing between principled opposition and destructive extremism. He also laments the decline of traditional higher education and intellectual rigor, noting how today's universities have become indoctrination factories rather than places of open debate, a trend that helps fuel polarization and tribalism. Economically, he notes the difficulties in addressing the growing deficit and the complexity of dismantling entrenched government programs due to concentrated lobbying, describing this as a structural problem beyond Trump's or any leader's easy fix. He suggests that boosting economic growth remains a pragmatic approach to mitigating fiscal issues in the short term. Throughout the conversation, D'Souza warns that America is in for a painful period of political and cultural reckoning. Drawing parallels with early American history, he suggests that just as religious liberty emerged from bitter persecution and mutual exhaustion, the current toxic divisions may eventually force some form of uneasy truce or new order. However, this will come only after considerable turmoil and possibly violence, as mutual radicalization accelerates and political violence looms as a real threat on both left and right. While skeptical about a quick return to civil discourse, he sees the present scorched earth tactics as a form of deterrence necessary in the current hostile environment. The hope, though faint, is that this brutal cycle will eventually end with new norms that allow America to heal and reunite.